All right, good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and turn your cameras on so we can see one another. And I'll keep adding people as they join. Hello, hello, good to see you all. Here we are, fortunately, in our first and hopefully only Zoom session of the semester. We're very fortunate today to be joined by one of our brilliant reference librarians, Carrie Martin. Carrie is going to, as I told you last week, Carrie is going to walk you through how to use the Purchase Library website, how to use all the databases and journals for your research that are available to you through the Purchase Library website. And one of the things we talked about is that your tuition dollars pay for subscriptions to dozens upon dozens of databases and access to various different kinds of research materials that in the private world you would have to pay tons of money to actually have access to. So this is a great thing for you to be able to take advantage of while you are a student here and make sure that you are using it to your advantage in not only your research project for this class, but for any research project that you have at Purchase in the future. So we're going to get started this morning by actually talking about, before Carrie officially joins us, we're going to talk about your assignment for Thursday, which is the research proposal. So I'm going to share screen here for just a moment. And while I'm doing that, please make sure also that your assignment that's due today, which is your final analysis essay draft, please make sure that that is posted to Moodle on this link here, posted under today's class. Please make sure your final draft is submitted. What I'm about to show you is the research proposal template, which is actually posted under last Thursday's class. The research proposal template, which when you open it up, looks like this. This is what you're going to submit for Thursday. And in this, you can use this as a template, as a format to set up the assignment. So number one, you're going to just identify the topic in a complete sentence. So this paper will cover climate change. Number two, you're then going to state the topic as your formal research question. And of course, we've talked about this at length now some. You all hopefully left last Thursday's class with a research question that you had actually written down based on your journal entry number 7 submission. And you are going to write it down formally here. Keeping in mind, of course, that these research questions are flexible and malleable. They are going to change a little bit as you begin conducting preliminary research, but make sure that whatever you submit for Thursday is the most up-to-date question that you're working with. Next, you're going to list 3 possible sources that you have found in your preliminary research. Now, let me say 2 things about this. 1, you are not glued to these sources. If by some chance you determine later that you actually don't need one of them, that's okay. You don't have to use it. But I do want you to have at least 3 sources, at least 2 of which must be scholarly. Write that down. At least 2 of these sources must be scholarly. The third one can either be another scholarly source or a popular source, which we'll talk a little bit more about today. You'll also see the note here that your sources must be formatted using MLA formatting, as though you were citing them in a works cited. So I want you to begin practicing using those guidelines, jumping on the Purdue OWL website, finding all the information that you'll need to make sure that you can properly cite it in the works cited. This is also good practice for, as we talked about when we talked about MLA formatting, making sure that you keep track of all of this information throughout all of your research so that the night before your paper is due, you're not scrambling to find a link that you had found months ago and now somehow cannot find again. Let's see here, good. So 3 possible sources, 2 of which must be scholarly, all of which must be formatted using MLA formatting. And then number 4, just lay out a research plan. So do not list here the deadlines that I gave you in class. I mean, that's part of it, of course, But I want you to take it to another level. Look specifically at the topic you're researching and what's going to be required of you. Are you going to interview one of your professors? Are you going to sit in on a talk somewhere else, maybe on campus or at another place at the 92nd Street Y or something that's going to be helpful to you? Are you going to watch a TED Talk or two? Is there a lecture that you found on YouTube that will be helpful for you? Is there a principal work that you're going to have to go see, maybe at a museum or at a library or something like that, that you're going to have to spend a little time with? So anything that you're going to need, if it's going to require watching a film or two, or getting familiar with a particular director's oeuvre, maybe you're going to need to sit down and do all that. I want you to lay that out in the research plan. What deadlines will you set for yourself? What other research will you need to conduct? What videos, films might you view as part of your research? Will your research include any materials that are not available in the purchase library? In other words, you're going to have to make some sort of accommodations to be able to get them. So how are you going to do that? What are the timelines you're setting for yourself? Again, looking at the overall timeline and deadlines for the assignment, how can you make sure everything fits together and sets you up to finish on time? So identify your topic, state the research question, 3 possible sources in MLA formatting or cited in MLA formatting style, 2 of which must be scholarly, laying out a research plan. The research plan does not have to be long. It can just be a little paragraph. It can even be bullet points, just something that tells me that you are geared up and ready to go. At the end of today's class, you're going, after Carrie Martin covers all the basics for using the Purchase Library website, you're going to have time to begin conducting some of this preliminary research. The goal here is that you should hopefully be able to find 2, maybe even 3 of the sources you need to list in your research proposal today in class. So then it's just a matter of writing it all up and formatting them properly for the assignment. Any questions about any of this? Okay, good. So I'm going to stop share now. And I'm going to turn the class over to Carrie Martin. Carrie, it's all yours. Carrie, everybody, Carrie.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Welcome everybody. It's great to see you all. I'm sorry that we can't meet face to face, but given the circumstances, the primary one is I've got little kids at home and we don't have them vaccinated at this point. So it's about keeping all of you safe. It's also about keeping my family safe. And I appreciate that you're all here today virtually instead. So let me share my screen and we'll get right into this. Okay, can you see my slides that say college writing? Yes, okay.
Yes, we're good.
I will just put this in present mode for now. Can you still see it? So what are we going to do today? And by all means, if you have a question, put your hand up, you know, flag me down, scream at me, whatever you want to do, turn on your mic, that's totally fine. I really appreciate when people interject, ask questions in the moment, because they are more relevant when you ask them at that time. So by all means, do that if you feel you need to. So what are we going to do? The library offers some really, really cool stuff, not only just for this assignment, for you in general. If you have not been here, please come in. It's actually really quiet in here right now. Even though we have the majority of our students on campus, it's still pretty darn quiet in the library. But we're open, and we're open a lot of the time during the week and also on the weekends. So we're here and accessible, even if you just need another place to go and chill and get some stuff done. We're going to talk about the research process and how to simplify it. Professor Morris is already, by having you do your research proposal, is breaking it down for you in a really awesome way. So just kind of keep that in mind as we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about what scholarly versus popular resources are, how you can tell the difference. We're going to discuss search terms. We're going to have a discussion, do a short group activity, and then I'll give you a chance to start generating some search terms for the topic that you're thinking about doing for this assignment. We're going to talk about searching for resources. I'll do some brief demos on searching databases. Keep in mind, if you want me to search your topic, this will be your chance to actually give me your topic to give it a try. I might find something for you. I will give you a chance to do some searching on your own, and then we'll just wrap up. And of course, feel free to ask me anything about research. I'm more than happy to answer your questions throughout this whole process. So, first of all, the library website, any Purchase College page, scroll down to the bottoms and actually click on the link that says library at the bottom of the screen. You don't have to worry about where the URL is. Just go to Purchase College website, scroll down to the bottom, you can click on library. The two things I do want to point out for you here is you can see our hours. There's some information about masks. We do need you to wear masks in the library. We're not accepting outside visitors, no food and drink in the library at this point. These are just for this time. You know, hopefully we can eventually relax all of these things. The other point I want to highlight here is the Ask a Librarian. If you need to get in touch with us for any reason whatsoever and you don't want to actually come into the library, please use this Ask a Librarian feature. You can email us. We have scripted questions with answers already in there. You can chat with a librarian 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you do your best work at 2 a.m., you can talk to a librarian and they can answer your question. So please keep this in mind. If you are struggling with even just something you think that is minor, please let us know. We want to actually get your question answered as quickly as possible so you can move on with your work and get things done. Okay, so let's talk about your research process. And this is going to be a group activity. I'm going to actually ask you guys if you want to speak up or you want to put it in chat. That's fine. Let's do this very briefly. And this can kind of go in context with your research proposal. You're thinking about what you're doing, what you're going to actually accomplish, what you need to actually look at, do. Where do you start with your research process? What is one of the first things you do? And I'm not looking for the perfect answer. I'm looking for where do you start? What are some of the things that you actually do when you start a project and you're thinking about what you actually want to accomplish? Go ahead and put it in chat or just unmute yourself and say where you start. And I'm going to actually type it on the slide. Shall I make a suggestion?
Wait, what's the question again?
So you're starting this project, right? So where do you start? What are you thinking about? What do you do? Do you do an outline? Do you read your primary text? Do you contact a librarian? Do you talk to your professor? Where do you start when you starting to put your project together? What are you thinking about? What are you doing? There's no right answer to this. I want your answer.
I would say for me, probably outlining. That'd
Okay.
be like the first thing I'd do. Yeah.
Okay. What else? Or something different? How about draft an introduction paragraph? Yep. And I will apologize now. I cannot type in public. So you will see a lot of mistakes. There we go. Draft an intro paragraph. Some of you might just do a whole rough draft just to get your ideas out on paper. How many of you take notes in class? Most of you, some of you? Consult your notes.
For God's sake, please raise your hands to that one.
Green? Let's see. Maybe you have a primary text. You're working off an actual, a novel or something like that, where you're going to take your topic from and then frame your question, your research question. So you might need to read it again or read it. Read. I know some of the texts that I used with one of my graduate programs, I actually had to read the texts probably 4, 5, 6 times. We're not necessarily expecting you to do that for this assignment, but reading it more than once might actually be necessary, or sections of it. What would you do next? Any ideas?
Like write
I
it. and
guess
just-
Ed, what'd you say?
I was gonna say, I guess now that you got like an outline, a paragraph, just like I guess like now that you know what you want to talk about, figure out what sources you can find to get more information for what you want to talk about.
And that was one of the suggestions I was going to make anyway, so I'm glad you thought of that one. So, and you might not know where to actually find them. This is why we're doing that session today, but maybe you're actually going to take a week and a half from now before you actually start looking for sources, and you're like, oh, wait a minute here, I need a refresher. So you might need to come back to the library. At this point, you might still be struggling as well. You might need to, with your professor. All this time you can be drafting. You could be going to back to your outline. You could be rewriting what you already have. My understanding is you're going to have multiple drafts to this as you work through it. The beauty of what Professor Morris does with you on this project is he really walks you through every stage of this process. He does not leave you to your own devices. He has you turn things in all through the process, which is nice. But what I'm just trying to do is try to get you to think about what you might need to be doing at different times. And there's no one way to do it. And there's no linear way, not you do A, B, C, D all the way through till the end. Sometimes you need to do A, B, and C, and then L, M, and O, and then you need to go back to B. It all depends on how your process works for you. But what I would encourage you to do in the context of this proposal you're going to be submitting is start writing down a plan. Have a section in your notebook where you're just writing down everything, kind of dumping your brain out on paper so you can see it visually. And I literally actually did this for both my kids recently. They just had a research project and a presentation to do. And we just got everything down on paper and referred back to it on a regular basis. So we knew where we had been, we knew what we needed to do still, and we could actually move forward from there. So, keep notes on your process. Also, please make sure to consult with people, not just your professor, if you have any questions or you think somebody else can help you out. I would suggest you not forget your classmates, because maybe either you've missed a class or they said something really amazing in class and you just want to talk to them about what they had mentioned, or you're borrowing notes, or somebody's doing a similar topic as you and you might want to kind of collaborate and share ideas or bounce ideas off of each other. That's totally fine. And it does not have to be classmates from this class either. If you have friends that are doing similar work, same major, they might be a resource too. Please don't forget your librarians. We want to make sure that you are always on track with your research and finding articles. So please come back to us and ask us questions. No question is too small. No question is stupid. Let us get those answered so you can get back to what you need to do. Here's my question. We're going to move on from this, but what do you think in this whole process is the most important thing that you need to focus on? And I do need somebody to chime in and offer up a suggestion of what they think. You've got this whole project to do. What do you think is the most important thing that you should be spending most of your time on? Kareem?
I might be wrong. I feel like it's making sure you have solid sources because it's kind of the backbone of what you're writing, maybe.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Yes, you need solid sources. Absolutely. However, and I'm not saying this because I just want to throw a curveball. It's actually not the most important thing. Okay. And I wish it was, but that's not what you actually need to produce for this project. You need a written paper. So the most time you should be spending is on pulling all your ideas together from your primary text, your notes, your articles that you found, scholarly or popular, and bringing all those ideas together and getting them down on your paper. Okay. So it really is your paper that you will be handing in is the most important thing. And that is where you should be spending most of your time. If you are struggling with finding the articles, stop and find one of us. We want to get you past those roadblocks so that you can get back to what is most important, pulling your ideas together into this paper. That is what you're handing in. That's what you're being graded on. You're not being graded on finding the most amazing articles out there. I apologize if you see these things popping up on my screen. I have Teams, I close it, but then for some reason the messages still come up. So it's the actual paper. If you are stuck at all, please, please, please come talk to us about finding the articles. Let's get you past that hurdle so you can get back to what's most important. Okay, so for research, consider it this way: what, which, and where. Okay, what is needed for your assignment, which words to use in your searches, and where do you find the resources for your topic? We've hinted on all of these. We're going to get to them, but let's just talk what it is you need for your assignment. So you need a certain amount of articles. You need a certain amount that are scholarly, some that can be popular. Also, don't discount when Professor Morris mentioned videos on YouTube, TED Talks, things like that. These could all be considered resources for your assignment. But there are some core things, such as the scholarly articles, that you do need to have. You need to at least have some of those for this assignment. And this is going to be important to know how to do, because you're going to apply what you're learning now to any other assignment you have in college. Okay, so scholarly versus popular. Let's just talk about this for a little bit. Scholarly journals on this chart, your audience is generally academics and professionals. So Professor Morris, all your other professors, me, we usually publish in things that are scholarly. That means they are typically written by experts or specialists in their field, often PhDs. No, we don't get paid for this, but it actually furthers our careers by contributing to these journals. The review process for these there's an editorial board and peer reviewers. Peer reviewers are the ones who, when you submit an article, they get sent out to peer reviewers. The peer reviewers read them. They send their feedback back to the editors and say, yes, this is great, or this is okay. We would suggest some tweaks or tweaks, not tweets, sorry. Or they can say, no, this article's complete garbage and we don't think you should publish it in this journal. So most articles, when they're peer reviewed, they've generally have a preliminary acceptance. Then they're going to go through some edits based on the peer review. Then they're actually put out there into the world. And we'll talk about this in terms of what you're looking for in relation to your topic in a little bit. because it does take some time for articles to go through peer review. Almost always the scholarly journals have references or works cited. Okay, popular magazines, they're generally for the general public. Things like Time, Rolling Stone, things like that. Most of the authors are journalists, staff writers, freelance writers. Some of these magazines now are online only. I'm sure some of you read them, but they are not experts or specialists in their field. The editors are professionals, and this is what they get paid to do. And there's rarely references or works cited. We're not saying you can't use these for your actual assignment, but you just kind of have to get a general idea of what the difference is. The other thing there is sometimes are trad magazines or journals. These are geared towards people in business. They generally have staff writers, specialists, vendor reps. They all get paid. They have professional editors. Sometimes they have references, not always. What you will be focusing on are probably scholarly and popular magazines in general. This slide, which I can also share some of these slides with Professor Morris, if you want to actually just refer to them, is just kind of lays out the difference again, what the difference between the two are. What I do want to point out here is the format down here for scholarly peer reviewed, what the previous slide didn't cover, is usually the scholarly articles have some sort of structure. Usually they'll have an abstract or a summary at the beginning of them. They'll often talk about their methodology and results, their conclusions. They'll have a bibliography. Popular articles don't tend to have that. So also when you're looking at these journals, we do have some of them in our library. You can always come and take a look at them. There's little to no advertising, no color pictures, graphics are used to support the text, like charts or graphs supporting what the research was done. The time needed to publish, again, this is what I kind of pointed out before. For scholarly journals, it's months or years before things are published. Whereas popular things, and this is because a lot of these are popular journals and magazines are online, is sometimes it takes minutes, days to actually publish these things, which is just a complete difference in what's happening with the scholarly resources.
Can I jump in here
Okay.
just one moment
Go
to
ahead.
touch upon something very important that Carrie just said? If you are researching a topic that is extremely current, the scholarly article issue, for the reason Carrie just talked about, becomes a little bit problematic because it often does take months or years for those kinds of articles to find their way into publications. If you're writing about, say, things having to do with COVID or something of that nature, it may take a little time. So you may have a little more difficulty finding scholarly sources on that exact topic or that are really up to date. You can supplement that sometimes with really high quality popular sources. And you can also use scholarly sources in other ways to look at comparable issues. If you were, again, studying epidemics or something of that nature, looking at HIV/AIDS in the 90s and the reactions to research and those kinds of things, looking at the Spanish flu in the 1920s and that kind of thing, they can help you sort of flesh out the scholarly aspect of your paper. Okay, just wanted to throw that out.
Yes, and that's actually an excellent point. And this is where I would refer back to your research process and thinking about this whole project is when you come to a source and say you're very current, if you are searching something related to the current pandemic we're dealing with and some of the effects it has on certain people in our population that have been affected more significantly than others, that's going to be hard to find scholarly resources on. But you have a lot of people talking about this, a lot of people writing about this. And if you find some significant articles that you want to use in the context of the current pandemic, please have a conversation with Professor Morris. And it's not just I found this article, can I use it? Come prepared. Make sure you've read it fully. Make sure you understand generally what it's saying. You may have to talk to Professor Morris if there's something about it that you find confusing. But also come prepared to say, I'd like to use this article for these reasons. And then that gives him a chance to then have a better conversation with you about how this is going to be folded into your assignment. I want to use it because this supports this part of my argument, or this refutes my argument, and I want to talk about that in relation to what I'm trying to say. So it's not that for current issues, you can't, you may not find those scholarly articles, but those good popular resources might be a better alternative. But it's the conversation you have to have with Professor Morris. Don't just assume you can use them without having that conversation. He wants to make sure that you're being thoughtful about what you're including in this assignment, and you're spending time with these resources, not just dumping them in and assuming that you can use them. We don't want you to get marked off for just grabbing stuff and not actually fulfilling the requirements that he's expecting you to fulfill. Okay, so let's start getting into actually searching things. And I want to talk about keywords. I'm gonna give you a chance to come up with some of your own keywords for whatever topic you're thinking about using. So in the context of databases, it's not as easy to search them as, say, just doing a Google search where you can just type in a phrase or a sentence. And using phrases is better, words is better, not complete sentences, because you don't want word search that actually don't relate to your topic. We're going to brainstorm some synonyms and look at subject headings. So for example, here, plastic surgery could also mean cosmetic surgery. Self-driving cars could also mean autonomous cars. So now's the time you have your topic to think about what other terms could I possibly use for what I'm talking about or thinking about. The use of Boolean operators, the words and or quotation marks, or this little asterisk. You'll see me applying this in different ways. There's some examples here, and I don't expect you guys to be pros at this point. This is what I do. This is what I do for a living. I actually help people construct searches like this. But for example, if you're going to do distance learning, you'll see those quotation marks there. Those quotation marks are there to make sure that when I'm searching in the database, those two words are together. If I search distance learning and peer relationships and don't put quotation marks there, those words are all over the place in the database. They're not together as phrases. I want those ideas together. Online education or remote learning, again, quotation marks. And you'll see here for the first one, I put and. So I want articles that have both distance learning and peer relationships in them. If I want to kind of expand my search significantly, I could put or in there so I could get articles that just have distance learning or just peer relationships. Online education here, this is something where I could have either or phrase, online education or remote learning, doesn't have to have both in the same articles. Then this one's a little more complex depending on what your topic is. And this is why coming to a librarian might be helpful. Searching virtual classroom as a phrase, and performing arts and creative. You'll see that asterisk there. What is that doing? It's actually expanding the possibilities. It could be creative, creativity, and every other variation you could possibly think of. So that's kind of what that is. It's basically, we call it truncation. You don't need to know that word, but it gives me multiple options by just putting in kind of the root word and not putting the end of that on the word. So, all right. Before we get too complex, because I'm sure some of you are looking at going, how am I supposed to do that? Let's just actually come up with some keywords here. So for remote learning and social networking, if I wanted to search these, let's just come up with some different words that we could possibly use to search besides remote learning. And please, again, chime in, unmute yourself, give me some other ideas of what I could search besides remote learning, or type it in the chat. And let's just kind of brainstorm what we would actually possibly search in addition to remote learning or in as a different alternative. What would you suggest here?
Just Zoom, maybe, like that might just be enough to kind of encompass that idea.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and there's actually other tools out there. There's WebEx. We use Zoom. My kids use this, Google Classroom. They're not using the remote version, but they actually post all their stuff in it, kind of like we have Moodle. So that's something to keep in mind. What else?
Maybe online learning
Mhm.
or online classrooms.
And these are two
Offsite,
different
maybe?
phrases. Sorry, go ahead.
Like offsite, maybe.
Yep, absolutely.
Distance learning.
Yes.
I'm looking through my notes and all of the things that we've, all the words that have been used in emails and
Yes.
whatnot.
Yes, and distance learning is interesting because it actually can mean different things. I think it's the definition of distance learning has changed significantly in the last year and a half to mean something very different, especially right now we're distance learning, but I'm guessing a bunch of you are actually on campus. So it's distanced, but we're physically on the same campus. Whereas before the pandemic, distance learning meant you'd be all the way across the country and you'd be going to a different school. That still happens too, but I think the pandemic has literally blown up what distance learning means. Okay, so let's go over to the other side, and we've got social network or social networking or social networks. What else could we actually use? And hint here, we already have some actual tools, Zoom, WebEx, Google Classroom that we've mentioned under remote learning. What could we mention for social networking? I mean, literally, what's your favorite social networking app right now? Probably nothing I've heard of.
You could say like Twitter, maybe. You know?
Yeah. Twitter, I've heard of that one. Facebook, although I think people are probably starting to leave Facebook in droves. But then again, under social network, I might actually put this too. Because you're networking with your peers in a different kind of way. Not the same way as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever else you use. That's something to keep in mind. So these are kind of proprietary tools, but social networking, how else would you kind of rephrase that? What other terms might you use for that? And it's okay if you can't think of anything, that's totally fine.
Like social media.
Yep.
That's almost the same word, but
Yep, absolutely. But some databases might not use social networking. They might use the phrase social media. This is why it's important to kind of think of these things. Literally, you can also Google these terms or these phrases and see what comes up. It might give you some ideas. You might stumble into Wikipedia. Oh yes, I said it. You might actually use Wikipedia to actually get some ideas for stuff like this. And just read an article, read the social networking article and see what other terms they use in there. It might be some keywords that you want to use when you're actually doing your research. Okay, so this is just an example of what you might do. And what I want you guys to do now is take 3 minutes and write your topic down on a piece of paper, or if you like to use, Google Word document, whatever you want to do. It's going to be a place where you're going to start putting your ideas together, writing all your notes down, using it to outline your research plan, what you're going to do, what you need to remind yourself of, but start writing some keywords down about what you want to search. So have your topic. Maybe if you have your research question, you're still trying to formulate your research question, start putting words down on that, and how could you do what alternative terms could you use? Just take 3 minutes now, and then we'll come back and we'll go talk about databases. So go ahead and do that.
So all of you should have some version of a research question coming out of last Thursday's class. So what you really want to do then are try to find these keyword phrases that you can sort of zero in on and think of, okay, what are all the different variations of this where I might find some gold for my topic? What are all the things I need to look at? Good.
Okay. Some of you may be sitting there going, I have no idea what I'm writing yet. That's totally fine. Some of you, looks like you've gotten a bunch done. You're working on it. You're thinking of ideas. That's great. Whether you have a lot down, whether you don't, you've started. Okay. So that is huge. That is really significant. You're starting on getting this process going. It does take a little time. I don't expect that you have every single word you might possibly search written down at this point, but it's a start to trying to get those ideas going and get something written down that you can then look at and start thinking about in terms of how you're going to pull these ideas together. Now you need to actually think about searching. So let's just talk about information in general. Okay, so we always the librarians like to use these iceberg analogies. And So most of the web out there is literally the smallest part of the iceberg that you see. Most of the icebergs that you see floating around in the ocean is under the water. You don't see most of it. Surface web, Google, Yahoo, Wikipedia, all the different things out there. That's where we spend most of our time. And that is literally probably 5% or less of what is available. Then you have the deep web. This is where we're going to probably spend most of our time. And then of course there's the dark web. We all know about it. Some of us are there more often than others. We're not going to talk about that because that's not where you're actually going to do the bulk of your research. But just be aware that a lot of the information out there, most people don't have access to. You have access to more of it because your tuition dollars pay for this, just like Professor Morris said at the beginning of class. Use it. Use these resources when you have access to them, because the truth of the matter is once you graduate, it's much harder to access this stuff. You can access some of it through public libraries, but they have a different model for why they choose resources as opposed to others. Now, there are research libraries around here, New York Public Library System, that they are research libraries actually. They're much more than just your local public library. So that's a way to get around it. If you have access to something like the New York Public Library or the Queens Public Library, you're going to get much better resources than, say, my library over in Connecticut. It's the way it is. I'm very blessed that I work on a college campus, so I have access to this stuff all the time. Honestly, I don't know if I ever left my job, what I would do. I would feel completely lost. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Now, I just want to speak to things like Wikipedia. I am never going to badmouth Wikipedia. It has its uses. When Wikipedia first started, everybody was a little, it's not so great. It's been many, many years since Wikipedia started. There's a lot of stuff going on there. There's a lot of good content out there, but it's not considered scholarly. You can consult it for information. I use it all the time. But if I'm looking for well-researched, peer-reviewed resources, I don't go to Wikipedia. I come back to the library databases because I know they've been through a rigorous review process. We still know that some of the editors on things like Wikipedia are questionable. We know of experts who have actually had to argue their case with the editors for articles either about these experts or a topic that they know about. They have to argue with the editors to say, you need to change this because this is inaccurate information. So Wikipedia is great. It's not perfect. It's not scholarly. Use it for ideas. There's also all of those works cited on there. Go find the works cited that they list and see if that's a legitimate source you can use. That's totally fine. But like this diagram shows, that's only the tip of the iceberg. That's where you can start. It's not really where you want to end up find scholarly sources. Okay, so where you're going to find library databases. There is what we call discovery search, which is basically our online catalog. You can search for physical materials here in the library, but you can also search for online articles. You can search by data in our databases by title. We have over 100 databases on specific topics. They're great. You can pick particular ones. I'm going to recommend some at the end of class. And then we also have our research by subject guide. This is especially, I like to point this out to this class in particular, because if you're doing any other research projects for different classes this semester, say for biology or psychology or something like that, we have guides that are specific to those topics and databases we recommend in those guides. So you don't have to just sit here going, I have no idea which database to search. You can go to the research by subject and see the recommended databases that you might want to use for those assignments. Okay, so discovery search. Let's just talk a little bit more about this. And again, this is our online catalog. You can search scholarly, popular, trade articles, books, ebooks, CDs, DVDs, scores, streaming, etc. There's a lot. Okay, so You can also search many databases at once, but like it says here, can be significantly overwhelming. So for you in this, for the assignment, I would actually say lean more towards subject-specific databases. You can start in Discovery Search. If you're happy using it, you've used it before, that's fine. I'm not going to fault you for it, but just be aware there's a ton of stuff in here. And you actually have to do more work kind of filtering through things. Even I find it frustrating sometimes. So subject-specific databases, you can get more scholarly and popular articles specific to subjects. You can search one discipline at a time. Say, for example, if you're looking for things on psychology, you could search psychology databases. Your results are more targeted. You have better options for reducing your list of results once you're in there. The subject headings are more nuanced, and subject headings will play into what keywords you've used. Remember, we said we're talking about social networking, and maybe social media is a phrase that a database uses. They might actually mark social media as a subject heading for what their articles are. So they'll attach that to every article they think talks about social media. And you also have a smaller set of results. And you won't get like the irrelevant materials that don't relate to your topic. Okay.
Can I just, when you're for just a moment on the subject specific databases, this is where it becomes critically important that you think about all of the subjects in which your particular topic may touch upon. So if you remember the example I gave in class a couple weeks ago of the student that had studied adult films and its sort of impact on domestic violence, and also how a lot of that imagery was mirrored in the culture, particularly in fashion magazines. So what possible subjects or disciplines does that touch upon? Well, it's psychology, it's sex and sexuality, it's gender studies, it's marketing and advertising. It touched upon all these different things. There were even aspects of it that touched upon like critical race theory, queer studies, African-American studies to some extent as well. So you have to also think around your topic. All right, what disciplines or in what disciplines might I find research, at this aimed at this particular topic? And that may depend on the particular lens through which you are looking at the topic. Thanks, Carrie.
Sure. Okay. So let's actually do some searching. I'm going to switch over to the library web page. You can see the library page now. Okay. Again, here's the discovery search. Here's your databases by title, and here's your research by subject. This is the live page, so this is what it would look like if you went to it now. I'm going to actually search, and this is just an alphabetical list of our databases. For a larger list and descriptions of the databases, you can click on this view more results, and it'll just give you the full alphabetical list with descriptions. You can read through them. I'm just going to search this one, Academic Search Complete, just because it's a really good database when you're kind of initially diving into databases and searching a topic. It's general. It's not subject specific per se, but you're going to get more scholarly resources out of this than, say, just searching online. So here's your chance. If you want to speak up and want me to search your topic, go ahead and unmute yourself or type it in the chat, and I can actually do a search for you. And don't be shy. I might actually find something for you.
Daphne wrote in the chat here, body language.
Okay. And it looks like Ed's got a topic as well. So let's start with Daphne's. And Daphne, is there something specific about body language that you're looking for? Oh, hair discrimination. That's a great topic as well.
I guess just like, oh, sorry to cut you off.
No, no,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Do you want to type your whole research question, even if it's a little, just put it in the chat so we can really know what we're working with?
Sure.
you guys have some great topics here. While Daphne's putting that in, I'm just going to search body language in quotation marks. Okay. Now, this is fantastic and might seem daunting initially. So just putting in the phrase body language without being specific about what we want to talk about or research in relation to body language, I'm getting over 3,500 hits. A lot of this stuff may be useful. Some of it may not. Now is the time to start kind of figuring that out. And that may mean coming back here and putting in more search terms, or it might mean filtering some things out. So just scanning through here, okay? How can a feeling be determined by? I don't need to put the and in there. So do you mean feelings or emotions?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you'll see here, and this is actually, in the last 5 years, these databases are getting smarter because they know how much people like Google and Google suggestions. So I'm just typing this in and it's actually giving me some ideas and some thoughts. And this is great because, say, for example, your keyword list is kind of short, but you're like, well, let me go into a database and start searching. The databases will actually start making suggestions for you, and you might get even more ideas about what you might want to search. So I'm going to actually choose feelings or emotions or experiences or attitudes just to see what happens. And we're going to hit search. All right. First of all, it narrows down the list of results significantly. So by putting in some additional terms, it's probably weeded out a whole bunch of stuff that you're not going to want to even look at. Now, 966 items is still a ton of stuff. If you're in here and you're like, I only want scholarly right now, the beauty of this is over here on the left-hand side of the screen, you can actually select scholarly peer-reviewed journals, and it will filter out anything that's not scholarly or peer-reviewed. The stuff that got filtered out could be great stuff, but your focus right now is just finding scholarly peer-reviewed. There's a time filter here. You could actually limit that. Be interesting, look at some of the older stuff in relation to this, especially from a psychology perspective, and see if attitudes have changed and research has changed on this topic. Also, you'll see source types, academic journals. Steer clear of book reviews. You do not want book reviews for this assignment. A book review is literally just reviewing a book. It's not going to give you any information that you're going to find significant to this assignment. So I just filter out to academic journals. And then I want to point this one out too. Actually, these two: subject, thesaurus terms might give you alternative ideas about what you might want to search, but then also the subject headings here. And this can really expand or contract what you're actually searching. This is interesting in terms of body language in relation to emotions and feeling. What about the social aspects of it? What about the physiological aspects of it? Psychological aspects. So it starts to get me thinking, you could go in so many different ways with this topic. So if any of you are kind of struggling with where you want to go and you want different ideas and you're finding Google's not giving you any ideas, this is another place you could go, do an initial search, look at what subject headings and terms they're using to kind of dig down deeper. So I just want to talk about the results here. Say, for example, you've gotten a set of results, you're liking what you're seeing, you wanted to start digging into some of these. So visual exploration of emotional body language, a behavioral eye tracking study. This is one particular article. It's an academic journal. Maybe not what you're looking for, Daphne, but here's what you do to figure out whether it's worth reading or not. So I'm going to click on the title and look at the full record. I'm not going to grab the article yet. This is going to actually save me some time. You may be saying, oh gosh, this is going to take forever. This actually saves you time. So you got the authors. Here's additional subject terms, body language, emotions. That's a key subject term that's key. Attentional bias. That's a very interesting thing. That might take you on a completely different track of what you're thinking about, but it's maybe a subject phrase or subject term you didn't even think about that they're using here. Recognition, posture is another thing in relation to body language. It's maybe a subset of body language, and it might be a term you want to think about. In considering this article, please, if it has an abstract, read it. Don't read the article to start off, read the abstract and see if it's going to be worth reading the full article. Read the abstract, say yes or no. If the answer is no, no love lost, move on. Okay, just go back to your search results and actually figure out what it is you want. Don't waste your time on things that you're not going to incorporate into your papers. At this point, say, for example, you're like, whoa, this is fantastic. This is one of the articles I want to use, at least for my research proposal. Use the tools here to actually save, cite, export, anything that you're going to use. And I still have students today who will save the URL at the top of the screen and assume that everything is going to be saved for them. Those URLs are not stable. They never will be. Use the tools within here. If you want to just save a URL, please use the permalinks within the database. So if I click on that permalink, this link will bring me back to this citation. Okay, not the URL at the top of the screen. So do yourself a favor now, use those tools in there and actually save these links, the permalinks instead. Or if you need to do a citation, you can actually have it format the citation. This is fantastic. Save your citations as you go. This is going to be very important. There's all different formats. You just scroll down to MLA. You can cut and paste your citation into a Google document or whatever document you want to save. And then you can format those at the end and you won't be, kicking yourself later for not saving all of those citations. Okay. If I email this to myself now, just bear in mind, you're only emailing yourself the article citation. If you want the full text, find the full text button here, open up the PDF full text. There it is. And you'll see these tools again along the right-hand side. Use those tools to save the permalink or email it to yourself, whatever it is you need to do. It's really important that you're using and be comfortable with these tools so that this is not a hiccup or a roadblock for you at all. Make sure you're using those tools that way. Back to the results list. There's a lot of stuff in here. I'm just scanning really quickly. There's something related to Parkinson's disease. Obviously, that's probably not what you're looking for, Daphne, or maybe it is. I'm not going to assume so, but body language, reading of emotion, and schizophrenia. There's a lot of different things here. Now, you're probably thinking a lot of this stuff is very specific. The research topics are very specific. How am I going to find what I'm looking for? Well, first of all, this may help refocus your topic if you feel like you're not 100% sure where you're going to go with this. But keep in mind, some of these scholarly articles, journals, really push the researchers to search very specific topics. So these are experts doing niche research in very specific things. It's not that these articles are bad for what you're trying to do. And this, I think, is really significant. Sometimes I have students who are searching and they're like, I'm not finding anything. I'm not finding anything. And they have a very specific topic and their topic is fantastic. It's not that there's no articles out there. It may be based on how you framed your topic. Nobody's actually written articles about the topic in the way you have framed it. And that's totally fine. When you're using these articles, you're not necessarily going to use the entire article. You may be looking for a section, and you're going to have to read the whole article to find it, but you're looking for a section about what that author is saying about a specific thing. And you're going to use that and incorporate it into your research and your writing. And then you're going to use another article and do the same. And then maybe you'll use a popular article and take a piece and do the same. So you're bringing together your ideas with either supporting information or information that's refuting what you're saying, and you want to discuss that into your paper. Do not necessarily assume that when you're doing your topic, searching your topic, you're going to just find the perfect articles that are talking exactly about what you're doing. Your ideas and your topics are unique to you and how you're putting your ideas together. And you're going to be pulling different pieces of information from different articles to then write your article and get all those ideas together. So let me just do one other search. Sorry for the misspelling. And this phrase actually comes up, hair discrimination. Okay, so this is a topic that this database uses. Okay, and this is clearly a phrase that's used, but there's not a lot of articles coming up about that. That's not to say there isn't articles about this. What I'm thinking is, what are some other search terms that could possibly use to get at this topic and get at the meat of what the people have been talking about and writing about? So some of my limiters are still there from my previous search. So I've got scholarly peer reviewed checked. I might want to go into subject terms. So hair, hairstyles, racism, African-American social conditions. There's one I can't even pronounce. So there's a lot of terms that are used in relation to this. It's still a small set. So my mind is kind of thinking, where else could I possibly search for? And I like this: hair oppression and approbation, tangled discrimination, schools, binding hair. I mean, this is a huge topic, and I'm sure there's more articles. Now, could it possibly be for this particular topic, you're going to find some scholarly sources, but maybe you're going to rely a little more on popular sources, newspaper articles, things like that, YouTube videos, or videos coming from other places. So don't just assume that because we're searching one database at this point and we've only searched one phrase that there's nothing on there. Yes, natural hair and racism. So that's another one that, and this is why I like to also search your topics. One, because you'll see initially I'm searching these. I've never actually researched these topics before. So even for me, I'm trying to figure out where we can go with this. But it takes kind of some working it through. Still not a whole lot of, but these are academic resources. So equal protection rights, and these might be worth looking into, at least to read the abstracts and see what I'm just scanning these really quickly.
Brush number 4, brushed aside, African American women's narratives of hair bias in school. One of the things that Moni wanted to possibly talk about or focus in on was the issue as it relates to children in school. So this may be something to look into.
Yeah, and I just looking at the subject terms here, self-esteem, I think, is huge in relation to this topic, especially with kids. They're still growing, they're still maturing, they're trying to figure out where they are in the world and how they fit in with everything or don't, or feel they don't. So hair shaming, there's another phrase that we haven't thought of yet. Narrative, I think, is huge. Getting people to actually share their testimonials about their experiences in relation to this.
Also,
and just
maybe
think,
just,
go ahead.
sorry, but also just maybe African-American women and hair, something that's a little bit more broad. We're looking at it from a racism discrimination, but maybe if you just look a little more broadly, more articles will come up.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, this is a topic that initially is not giving us a whole lot of results, but I hope, you know, in just talking it through and talking about this, it's one of those things that maybe we have to figure out how to kind of massage the database a little bit differently, or turn to another database that might give us different results. This is only one database. Now, we're kind of running out of time, but I want to give you guys a little time. Let me give you 5 minutes to just initially start searching in Academic Search Complete from our databases. And then let's come back and kind of tie things up and finish things up. I do want to talk about citations a little bit. And if you have any questions, by all means, unmute yourself or type them in the chat. And sorry, I can't search everybody's. You guys have great topics. So just go ahead and take 5 minutes and do some searching of your own for your topic. And let's see if you can come up with anything. So go ahead. Okay. 5 minutes is obviously nowhere near enough time for you guys to find everything you're looking for. I totally understand that, but I hope at least this is giving you a sense of, at least initially, how much time it's going to take you. You also don't need to do this kind of research in marathon sessions. You all have lives. We all do. You have other classes. You have other things to do. You need to eat. You need to sleep. You need to call your family members, see how everybody's doing. You need to call your friends. You need to go to that party. I totally understand it. But this can be done in small chunks of time. Now, you've already started writing down your keywords. Hopefully you're putting together your research proposal, formulating a plan for what you want to do. Take notes as you're doing this research. You're saving your citations for the articles you want. So then when you say take 10 minutes before a class or your favorite show's coming on, you find one more article, you put it into your Google Doc or whatever you're using. You've saved it. You're not reading it right now. You just saved it so you can come back to it. But once you then come back to your research and working on your project, you know where you've left off. And so you're kind of doing yourself a favor as you're taking notes and keeping track of where you are and where you've been and where you want to go. You can just kind of pick up in the midst of everything else you have to do. And that's one thing in terms of time management and just kind of being mindful of this. If some of you have actually found an article already, fantastic. Congratulations, you're on your way. And it only took you 5 minutes. Okay, so think about that. Two more 5-minute sessions before submitting your research proposal today, and you literally found 3 articles in 15 minutes. So think about that in terms of that. Or if you find 1 article a day for the next week, then you've got far more articles than you need for the assignment. Okay, so you can do this in small chunks of time, and then you can then go back and actually read the articles. What I will say is, please take some time to think about reading these articles in a thoughtful way, not just sit down and just start reading it from beginning to end. Read the abstract again, get a sense of what the article is talking about. Leaf through the whole article. Are there sections? Are there different sections that say, talk about their research? Or do they do some sort of, they've done a whole section on what other people have researched before they talk about what they've come up with? Is there an introduction? Is there a conclusion? Get a sense of what's there. Are there any charts and graphs in the article? Get a sense of what those are. Then go back and start reading the article and make sure you're taking notes. If you're working digitally, take your notes however it works for you. If you printed out the article, by all means, it's yours to keep and do what you want with it. Highlight it, take notes on it. Use it for whatever you need for the assignment. So reading is a little bit different once you're in college. It's not just sitting down, reading it from beginning to end. And make sure you're highlighting those sections that you want to refer back to and maybe reread as you're putting your articles, your research project together. Citations, again, oh no, my labels are already all there. Sorry, it was going to be a surprise. And we'll go over this quickly. Please make sure you're saving your citations. Even though these databases are amazing and they have amazing tools in them to put together your citations for you, you are still responsible for all the information that's in those citations. So you need to check those citations for accuracy. Yes, the databases do a great job these days at putting these citations together, but you are still responsible for making sure they're accurate. So you need to make sure you have an author, an article title, a journal title, especially if it is an article from a journal. You need all of this confusing information here: volume number, issue number, the date, the page numbers, where you found the article. All of this information should be in the citation tool in the database, but you need to kind of keep that in mind. The article title and the journal title are key. Make sure you know the difference about where they are and that you have both of them. This can trip students up a lot of times. So make sure that you're able to distinguish this, especially if, say, for example, you found an article and you say, come to the library or give your friend the article title saying, I think this will be useful for you. Make sure you're not just giving them the article title. You need to actually share the article title, what journal it was published in, and then most journals are published more than once a year, not necessarily weekly like some popular magazines, but you need to know which volume it is, what issue of the year it was in, what the date was is helpful as well, and also what the page numbers are. These are all significant pieces of information. And if you miss these out in your citations, you will get dinged for them in your final grade. So just kind of keep those in mind. Fiddly, fussy stuff, I know, pain in the butt. I don't like doing works cited either, but it's necessary. So just kind of make sure that you're saving all of those things. Okay, so we're close to time. I don't release you, Professor Morris releases you, so please don't just disappear once I'm done. If you have any questions, by all means, unmute yourself, interrupt me. I'm here. I'm happy to answer questions. But these are the things that I'm going to recommend you try. Yes, I said Discovery Search searches a ton of stuff all at once, but you may actually find your best stuff in our catalog using Discovery Search. You may find a book here in the library that has a chapter that you want to use for your paper. That is totally fine too. You're going to find those things through Discovery Search. Also, don't forget, we have a huge DVD collection. We have graphic novel collection. We have a huge CD collection here in the library. And if you just want to come in and borrow some of that stuff, not for an assignment, you're more than welcome to do that. That's what we're here for. That's what your tuition dollars pay for as well. So there's Discovery Search, Academic Search Complete, which we searched and tried out today. Another one is ProQuest Research Library, which is got a bunch more newspapers in it. So if you're looking for something from New York Times, Wall Street Journal, some of those big national newspapers, or some of the smaller newspapers that are published, you're going to find more of those in ProQuest Research Library, especially for some of those topics that are maybe more current, maybe don't have as many scholarly articles out there. ProQuest Research Library would be huge. Another one I like to recommend for your topics is Opposing Viewpoints. It's another database we use. And for some of those topics where there's maybe differing sides and opinions on a particular topic, and you're trying to consider all aspects and all opinions, Opposing Viewpoints might be useful. So at this point, I want to thank you guys for letting me come to class. I really appreciate it. Again, ask a librarian if you have any questions. We're literally here sitting around waiting for you guys to ask us questions. This is our primary reason for being here, to get you through that research piece, to actually get back to what's most important to complete your assignment. So please use us. It's very quiet in the library right now. We would love more questions. We would love to help you. And even if you don't want to come in and you want to do a one-on-one Zoom session with one of us, that's totally fine as well. And you don't have to use me. We have about 6 of us, 6 librarians here. If you have worked with another librarian before, that's totally fine as well. We're happy to work with you. So at this point, I'm going to pass it back over to Professor Morris. And if you have any questions, I can stay till the end of class.
Carrie, thank you so much. Before we dismiss, I want to touch upon just a couple of quick things. One, going back to something Carrie said a moment ago about preparing yourself to read some of this scholarly research, particularly the scholarly research. If you are not used to reading this kind of material, and most of you aren't at this point, and that's okay, you are going to need to prepare yourself for this. These articles tend to be long, they tend to be dense, they tend to use often very high vocabulary, sometimes even a lot of terms of art that are known within a particular field that you might not be familiar with, and you may have to kind of look up to kind of understand what's going on and follow along. So I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago and they mentioned reading Plato, and they said you have to read Plato 2 or 3 times to be able to read it for the first time. And sometimes that can sort of feel like the case with reading scholarly works as well. It takes a couple of times to acclimate to it and really be able to say, oh, okay, I think I'm getting it now, I understand. So build that time into your research time. The other thing I want to say that goes back to something Carrie mentioned a moment ago is don't be afraid to use the sources you find and look at the sources that they cite too as well. Remember, a minor comment or a minor point in one paper may be the major point of another paper. So if you look to the citation that briefly references that point in one article, you can go directly to that other source and you might find a wealth and breakdown of information and other sources that help you flesh out that other topic. So I don't mean to say that you can just hunt through the works cited of one source and say, okay, I found my 3 sources or I found my 5 sources and that's it. Then you're basically just replicating the paper that somebody else wrote. No, but if you for example, Imani, if you're looking up, using those search terms, African-American women and hair, and you come across one source that, talks about the issue generally, but you see another source that briefly reference or that may discuss a specific aspect of the topic in more depth, we'll go to that source and see what it has to say. And even if that's not the sort of final answer, it may be a link in finding something else. So use the sources within the sources as well. Carrie, thank you so much. Everybody on mute for a moment. Just give snaps for Carrie. Yes. Okay. This is really helpful. And I urge you, if you are having problems finding sources, do not wait. Please, this week, reach out to Carrie, reach out to another librarian, God forbid, go into the library, get on this as soon as possible, because your first drafts are due 2 weeks from today. I know the final deadline for this project is not until December 13th when you'll submit the paper, but you are going to submit a draft before then. You're going to submit numerous other small assignments before then. You're going to put together a research presentation before then. So do not delay. You cannot do any of those things without sources. You cannot do any of those things without sources. So definitely get on the ball. Okay, I know you all will. Thank you for your engagement today. Carrie, thank you for an excellent job. And if anybody wants to be put in touch directly with Carrie, I can help facilitate that as well, so that we can build upon whatever research you found or help you get on track. I think that's it for today. Are there any other questions before we sign off here? Okay, great to see you all. Your research proposals are due on Thursday. You'll upload those in Word, Pages, or Google Doc format on Moodle. I will see you on Thursday back in our regularly scheduled time at our regularly scheduled classroom. Thank you all. Thank you, Carrie, again. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.